And I was working, 70 or 80 hours a week for like 12 grand a year or something. It was really painful. I think you have to lead by example. And I think EQ is probably the single biggest skill that you need when you're managing people and you're running a business. The more senior you become, the more expert you become. It is a sales job. It's about your clients. It's about what they need from you. And it's about how you solve things for them. And ultimately, dating is all about KPIs, right?
Oh, never said that to me.
The thing that I tell people all the time, internally and externally, is don't ever confuse change with progress.
Hi, I'm Chris Lisserman and welcome to Sparks, a series by Interactive Workshops. In every episode, we spark something in work and life, from how to spark excellence, to how to spark energy, to how to spark, Jonna, just the right number of notifications to your devices at all times from all the apps.
Yeah, well, the good thing is I've got options on that, so I can now assess which notifications I want. I can choose those. The only thing is if I sign up for a new thing, I just get thousands of notifications.
Yeah, overloaded instantly. Yeah.
But as you know, I don't check my messages anyway. Currently got 1,500 unread voicemails.
Yeah.
So notifications mean nothing to me.
I feel like there should be an app, but that app itself, in dealing with the notifications, would give you a load of notifications, wouldn't it?
Is there a notifications aggregator? I'd love that.
Yeah, that'd be nice.
Something that could synergise all the messages into a simple summary.
Be good.
Brings us to our topic, Chris.
Brings us to our topic, a bit of synergy with another very special guest. Jonna, introduce them.
We have a very special guest all the way from Dartmouth Partners, top specialist boutique recruitment firm. Boutique. And we've got CEO Terri, Loska.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. So great to be here.
We've got the chief.
Yeah.
And you've had a glittering career, Terri. You've been at Dartmouth Partners since it was founded. And you've risen all the way to the top, something we could only dream of.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Is it as easy as they make out in the magazines?
It is, you know what, it's a lot that's the same. And then there's a tiny little bit that's different. But the bit that's different is incredibly important.
Which bit is that?
So the topics that you're talking about are the same, and a lot of the problems that you're trying to deal with are the same, the challenges, the questions, all of that sort of stuff. And you'll sit in a room and you'll discuss all of those things. And then at the end of that discussion, the room will go silent. And you'll suddenly realize, oh no, I'm the one who needs to speak. I'm the one who needs to decide what happens next. And that, I think, is a real responsibility. And
it all comes down to responsibility, doesn't it?
Yeah. And that sense of accountability. Ultimately, the buck stops with you for everything.
Yeah.
And that takes a bit of getting used to.
It's a little bit of a mantle that you have to wear, a cloak that you have to wrap yourself in. That the fact that there's not actually anyone above and there's not actually anyone under. It's you.
I think a big part of getting the job actually is being willing to be really uncomfortable at times, because sometimes that is an uncomfortable place to be. You put yourself in uncomfortable situations. You get up and do the end of your presentations. You do podcasts like this. You guys are not super intimidating, but still, you put yourself out of your comfort zone, and you are the person where everything sits with you. And I think part of the job is being willing to be under that kind of pressure. I don't know why. I don't know if I ever decided that I was willing to be under that kind of pressure, but I am now. So.
You've ended up that way.
Yeah, here I am. And
can I say, when you do speak up, your voice is so clear, communicator.
Yes,
we were just talking about that before we started, Jonna, weren't we?
You'd never know Terri was from the Potteries, Stoke-on-Trent.
Stoke. It's not. I didn't know that was the Stoke accent.
Yeah. This is a sort of an evolved Stoke accent. Let's call it.
Tell us a little bit about your story then. So
yeah.
I'm imagining that there wasn't a girl in school thinking, one day I'd like to be a CEO of a recruitment consulting firm. So what did you want to be when you grew up? I wanted to be a forester. I thought that'd be excellent, tramping around outside with a chainsaw.
That sounds like a great job, actually.
Yeah, what did you want to do?
So I studied classics at university, which is a really interesting degree, but absolutely useless for anything in the real world. You find a lot of politicians who are classicists, but pretty much nothing else. But I finished my degree and I thought, could I work in a museum? Could I work in an auction house? I've been surrounded by old books and manuscripts and things. So I ended up doing an unpaid internship in an auction house for a year. And in order to pay to live in London, I also worked in a bar on Drury Lane, a place called the White Hart, which is in Theatreland. So you get loads of stag do's, loads of hen do's. It was just opposite Hairspray at the time. Like that dates me, I think. Michael Ball, I think was his Isaac.
Woke up this day feeling this
You've got
way
him
like
started
I
now.
always do. Like that.
You know.
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know. And I was working, 70 or 80 hours a week for like 12 grand a year or something. It was really painful. But I realized, you could sit in this industry for 10, 20 years, but you're not progressing unless the guy next, and it's always a guy, but
I'm so sorry, Terri.
What can we do? Yeah.
One out of three is not bad.
But why is it always you?
That's so true. That is true. But you realise like there's no moving up. There's no moving on until somebody else does. There's no sense of meritocracy. But they're all selling stuff. At the end of the day, I thought it was this, refined. They're manuscripts. They're old maps. That it's intellectually challenging. It's a sales job, and so many industries are really. The more senior you become, the more expert you become. It is a sales job. It's about your clients. It's about what they need from you, and it's about how you solve things for them. And so. Anyway, but what really happened is a guy who used to work in a recruitment firm on Drury Lane was trying to chat me up, and he said, "Yeah, I can get you a job interview."
You definitely trust the dating skills of someone who works in recruitment agency.
The recruiters are great at recruiting.
They're great. They're good at rapport building,
Yep.
influencing, meeting new people, encouraging people, getting them to step out of their comfort zone, make a change.
And ultimately, dating is all about KPIs, right? Like,
Is it?
you collect enough numbers in the end.
That to me.
Wow.
You go on enough dates, you kiss enough frogs, and at the end of the day, you'll find the right guy. And
It's a funnel, and you're just whittling them
It's
down.
a sales funnel.
Yeah.
It's a sales
So he just took the same approach, I think, to dating
works.
as he did to So he tried to get me a job in his recruitment firm, and I didn't get it, which I think was heartbreaking at the time. But I remember waking up and I got this call, you haven't got the job, and I thought, okay. But I could get a job in this industry. Maybe not this one, but I could get a different job in a recruitment firm. And that would be better than working 70 or 80 hours a week for 12 grand a year. And so 5 days later, I got a job in recruitment working for my old boss, Logan Naidu, who still is part of the group, runs Colonel Global, which is the group that I'm part of. And I've worked with him now for 14 years.
Brilliant.
Since that fateful day.
So you're sticking around with Logan, and we're going to get a little bit into the topic, but our topic today is synergy. We thought we're always trying to think about how you can spark things in work and life, but we thought this is like part of the biggest thing about work is, can we get everything working together? Can we orchestrate things? Can we get person X to synergize with person Y? Can we bring client A and client B and find a win-win situation for them? But I'm thinking like now you're top of the tree and you're looking in those longer term things. You're trying to work out how to bring all the instruments in the orchestra together and trying to get everything playing well. How do you go about synergizing a bigger company? How do you get that to work?
That is a great question.
I don't know the answer. That's why I'm hoping you can help me. Okay, could you give me some advice? I'm running a bigger company. I don't know how to get it to work.
Let's clear this up.
I've got too many bassoons, not enough trombones. How do you go about getting a whole team like that together in the best way you know how?
Honestly, I would love to have the answer to that. And actually, I spend much more of my time now, more than ever, trying to answer that question. So a big part of the job, I talk about conducting traffic often. Like the orchestras, it's the same kind of analogy. That is exactly what the job is. I think, I work in a business where we have, 120 people, most of whom are, they've got a day job, they've got a client base, they've got people who depend on them, they've got things that they need to deliver day in, day out. They don't necessarily have one eye on, what's the kind of, if I just take a slight left turn, is there a greater commercial opportunity over here for my colleague, for my friend? Is there a way that I could take a bit of additional value off the table? Could I create more value for the organization? It's really difficult to get people out of the weeds and be able to see that.
I'm thinking also that your organization is quite a relatively flat structure.
Yeah.
How do you get that group of people synergized and working together? Many companies in that setup struggle with the individualized nature of everyone looking after their own revenue and P&L, whatever else, their own clients. How do you make a team or some kind of teamwork in that kind of environment?
Well, I'll tell you, I think actually the thing that we've been struggling with a bit more recently, and I think that this is relevant to lots of businesses that have grown to any kind of scale, is that scaling basically involves putting some sort of process into things. and becoming more process driven and having some kind of controls over, like quality controls over the way that you deliver work, the way that you kind of win clients, all of those sorts of things. And what you lose often is a bit of flair, and you lose a bit of individuality. You lose that kind of great salesperson or that great client relationship person, because you're focused more on the process, and those people become the outliers rather than the kind of those at the forefront.
Yeah.
And part of our conversation at the moment is like, actually, how do we get a bit of flair back into some of what we're doing? How do we tap into that really dynamic, really creative commercial thinking that people in our industry, our client facing industry, are so good at?
How can you rekindle that kind of spirit of entrepreneurship?
Yeah, absolutely. And entrepreneurship is the right word.
And have brilliant individuals whilst also having a strong collective as well. People who can express themselves, but also work with others. Really
and follow processes and make sure
follow
they've
leaders.
got things done properly.
All the things.
Yeah.
I think building the right platform is quite a big part of it, actually. I think, we were talking about this earlier. We have a very diversified platform, but within very complementary areas. So we do recruit. We are a boutique, but we recruit into a number of different verticals, and those verticals sit really closely together. They're very complementary, and our business creates a kind of gravitational force where you have a strength in one area, it opens up doors and opportunities in another area. That makes it easier to win. It's kind of like a flywheel.
We found that when we opened our New York office.
Mm-hmm.
People think, anyone can open a New York office. You just need one person in New York with a desk. But people think that when they look in, they think, wow, those people must know something because they've got this here and there. It's similar across sectors, isn't it? You think, oh, right, well, you work in finance, but you also place people for M&A, consultancy. People look at the different verticals and think, oh, right, they know what they're doing across lots of complementary areas.
I think that's right. I also think, if you're known for delivering work into largely, so it's either front office, so it's high impact revenue generating, or it's high impact strategic. Like generally speaking, these are roles that are incredibly important to the organizations that we're recruiting for. And so there's a kind of credibility that comes with that. You can solve our most challenging problems. And so therefore I'm going to come to you when I have my next problem or my next problem. And that might not just be human capital. That might be, how do I drive my D&I agenda, or how do I think about my talent pipeline for the next 5 years? It starts to lead you in really interesting directions, as long as you're capable then of having those conversations with them when they come to you.
Yeah. I'm quite interested. So we're all parents around this table.
Yeah.
Do you run a similar? You seem very CEO-like and kind of. Even if you slightly sit in the meetings thinking, hang on a minute, is it me that's going to take this decision? But I'm interested, are you the same kind of person when you're outside of work, with a social life, home life? Because one of the big challenges in modern life is trying to synergise all the different elements, all the pressures. You've got your P&L at work, but you've got your finances at home. You've got your investment decisions at work, but you've got your mortgage decisions at home, and whether to buy the new car or which supermarket to go to get the best value. It's all the same stuff. Do you run CEO brain at home? Or is that different, and you kind of switch off when you're someone else at home?
I think all of my CEO energy and my CEO brain goes into my CEO job, and I find that, and actually you'll find most recruiters. So people, and for years historically, I was on the phone interviewing people constantly. I was, you constantly meeting people, talking to people, asking them questions about themselves. The thought of them ringing your mother on a Saturday afternoon, or having a conversation with one of your friends is like, absolutely not. I would never be. The thought of picking up the phone is like absolute zero. It would never occur to you. And I think there's something similar when you move into a new role and you take on those new responsibilities. You funnel so much of the energy you have for that thing into that role, that what you have left over at work, at home, is like the other part of yourself. Which is like, I don't have to drive the agenda at home. I don't have to make every decision on where we go at the weekend, or what we do, or who we see. And I'm very happy to leave some of that to my husband.
Take a back seat.
Yeah, and he's, we're having an extension built at the moment, and he's very much project manager of that. And for me, it's like, show me your top 3 choices and I'll pick one. But that's it. I do not want any involvement beyond that.
You don't have the energy to be CEO in that environment.
Exactly.
That is the CEO. Show me the 3 options and I'll pick one.
That's your CEO approach.
Maybe that's true. Maybe I am the CEO.
Yeah.
I do think for me, it flips as a manager. It flips between sometimes going home buzzing and coming home in a bit of a management mode of, right,
let's get this done.
Let's get this
this
done.
now.
What can I drive forward? And other days, it's like exactly what you're describing. I'm done. My management energy, my thinking energy, my social energy is done. And I just need to maybe lie down.
People sometimes say to me, you've got so much energy, where do you get it from? And it's like, resting. I go to bed at 9:30 nearly every night, latest 10 o'clock. I don't drink. I spend large parts of the weekends laying around while my children are out in the park playing football or riding a horse or what they're doing. It's like I don't burn the candle at both ends because I need all that for this. And
they're seeing you when you're using the energy, not when you're re-energizing.
Exactly. And I feel also actually as our business has got bigger, the decision-making power that I've got for home has got less. And like things that in the past I'd really proactively sort out and drive forward. Actually, the 10 years ago, build an extension, let's do it. Now it's like, I've got so much headspace on work. I don't really need another project.
Yeah.
And something we've talked about, Jonna, on the podcast before is the idea of work-life balance being a bit of a myth. And those things aren't in direct tension. They're not in competition. You have to keep living as you're working. I'm wondering what you think about that, Terri.
I mean, I think ultimately we're all three-dimensional people. I think that that's fundamentally it. And I think there is a place in your life for work and home life and family and hobbies and all of the stuff that you would want as part of your life. But then they're never going to take an equal share. And like my priority list and the kind of, the things that I want to spend my time on are the things that I want to do. It's just a case of ordering them, and they're never all going to get equal attention. They're also never all going to get attention at the same time. I had a kid 18 months ago and I stepped into this role only 2 or 3 months ago. And my diary is suddenly significantly busier than it's been for a while.
Uh-oh.
And, I just had to accept that this is not the year that I'm going to train for a triathlon, right? Like it's not the year that I'm going to, I love the Tour de France. I love the Giro. Like I would love to do some of those cycles. I'm not going to do them in the next year or 2 or 3 years.
Should we book in for next year?
Yeah, maybe next year. Maybe that's an ambition. But you cut your cloth according to what's important to you, what you want to invest in right now. But in the same way that there's a finite pot of money you have and you invest in some of the things that you believe in and you kind of you put it in this savings account or that savings account. I think your time and your energy is the same. And I'm in a fortunate position in that like I can work, I could do a really interesting job and I want to do that really interesting job. And so it's a choice that I make. I choose to spend time at work and I choose to really, invest in that. It means that I miss out on things elsewhere and that's a conscious choice. But I also choose to be at home at times and I miss out on things at work. Yeah. And I know I'm doing that too.
We see it sometimes actually the parenting crew amongst us on the work socials. And it's like who's slipping off early. And it's, you know who it's going to be. They're thinking through all their priorities in life. Yeah, they know they need what to invest some into work. I mean, sometimes they'll be the last one standing as well. But there's additional sets of layers of thoughts about
and priorities,
as
you described. Yeah.
And again, like you think your kid's sick, you've got to be there. You've got other things in your mind, but yet you can't let your work focus slip. It can't drop off. I think it's quite a challenge.
Yeah, I mean it's definitely a challenge, and I think no matter who you are and what kind of job you have, like people don't want to turn up to work to do a bad job. Generally speaking, I don't think people feel good about that, and people generally, they want to turn up and do the best that they can. But I think there's also a reality that there'll be times in your life where you can't give anywhere close to 100%. Right? You can't even give 70 or 80%. If you might have aging parents, you might have like other stuff going on. Yeah. Like there's just a reality to that. And I think, I'm lucky in that when I came back from maternity leave, I was relatively senior. I've been in the business for a long time. Those things help. Don't get me wrong. But I also had an incredibly supportive group of people, all male, by the way, around me, saying, you take on as much or as little as you want, but we'll find a path for you to come back to work and to make it worthwhile. Because I think in those first 3 or 4 months, the hardest thing is like there's so much to balance and it's just a hassle and you're doing a bad job on both sides. And if you don't feel like it's worth it, do you just opt out? Do you just say, okay, I'm going to focus on one and not the other? Yeah. And that's my choice for the next 2 or 3 or 4 years.
That's interesting because some people do make that choice, but you didn't. You just said, I'm going to give everything a go. I'm going to do my best. But I think people can buy into that. They can buy into someone who's prepared to take on challenges, and it's similar actually in a sports team or something like that. When let's say you're a domestique in the tour, and you're asked to do a role and said you won't be the best up the mountain, you won't be the fastest, but your job is to work really, really hard at the bottom piece. Someone else is going to get the glory. I think it's interesting. People can buy into someone who works hard, and it's obvious that you're garnering that around you.
Yeah, I think you have to lead by example, and that doesn't mean. Look, I worked for a CEO for years who was, first in the office in the morning, last out at night, and took real pride in saying, I will always be the hardest worker in the room, and that's brilliant, and that's incredibly. I mean, it's to a large extent, it's probably got us to where we are today, or at least it's played a big part in it. But there's also a reality to lots of people's lives where, I can't be the first in the room and I can't be the last out the door. There are other demands that I have on my time. But what I can say is, like, all the things that I need to do, I'm going to get done. Yeah. And, if I'm ever at a point where I'm not doing them well enough, like, you can tell me.
Where do you think you get your drive from? Because not everyone has different levels of drive. Some people have high levels of drive, but that drive can come from different places. I'm curious what you think it is that sparks you, that makes you want to do you said people want to come to work and do their best, but you want to do your real best. Where's that coming from?
I mean, I think the work ethic originally, growing up, my mum always earned more than my dad. And not like dramatically, but she was clearly the.
What did she do for a job?
She worked in pensions, and my parents both, they didn't go to university. They kind of, she was a pensions administrator for what was it became Watson Wyatt, Towers Watson.
Yeah, Right.
But it was bought 5 times and she was made redundant 3 times. And but she was really diligent. She worked really hard and she enjoyed her work. But it was, she was the person who earned more money, and that I knew that growing up. And my dad hated his job, and he made glasses at Specsavers and Boots.
We need glasses as well.
They said, yeah, sure. I mean,
it's required. Yeah, necessary work.
He's just one of those people that he could not wait to retire, and he did, because my mum was a pensions administrator, so she got a great pension.
Sorted him out. Yeah.
She sorted them both out, so they were fine.
That's really funny.
Yeah, but that, I think, very early set an expectation. And then I went to university. I went to Oxford, and there were.
I've been to Oxford as well, by the way.
It's
Did
nice.
you visit, or were you studying there?
I stayed for 4 years.
I just visited.
Yeah,
just for a day. Yeah.
They didn't make me leave in that 4 years. But I met a lot of people there who, I think it came from very traditional backgrounds, let's say, and there was a very clear dynamic between some of the men and women that I'd gone to Oxford with, and I think I really at that point felt like I want to be able to earn my own money. Like, I want to buy a flat that's my own, and I want to feel like I've played a part. And now I have a son, actually. I found myself thinking more about how do I want him to view me, and how do I want him to see me? What do I want him to think of when he thinks of me? And I think it's really important that it's not, daddy makes all the money, and daddy buys the holidays, and daddy does this and that. And like, there's a role for women to play, which is nurturing and so on. And I would like to think I do that too.
So that perception has become a driver. Big driver for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I find, I think still I think whether you have a son or a daughter, there can quite often be this dynamic of, oh, silly mummy, silly mummy doing silly things. And even for daughters, I think they quite like to, I think they gravitate towards men. I think they gravitate towards that, not always, but often, that sense of, he's the one in control, and I kind of want to be with, I want to be with him. And we're really careful about that at home. Like, everybody's got a role to play, and it doesn't have to be equal. It doesn't have to be those things. But for me, it's really important that he sees me as somebody who's contributed in lots of ways, and not just at home.
Yeah, that's great.
Love that.
I'm thinking it because I sometimes feel that if you look at the portrayal of dads, Peppa Pig's dad, for example.
We're not at Peppa Pig yet.
He's
dad?
slightly chubby and a bit stupid. Homer Simpson.
Yeah.
Slightly chubby and a bit stupid. But it's interesting, isn't it? Our stereotyped views of how parents may or may not be, what roles they may or may not take. What we project onto our kids, what we set expectations, set them. I love to mix it up. I love to change it up. And it's also, you talked about nurturing. Like, men can be very nurturing as well. And we should be. We should do it. We should do all the nurturing we can do. And like, I'm pretty quite overly emotional as a person. And so I'm able to jump into my kids' emotions with them. And I find it really important. And it's the same empathy skill I use at work.
Yeah.
Same as at work. Sometimes you want to empathize with someone. Sometimes you want to create a little bit of conflict with someone to get a reaction. But it's the same with the children. Can you use those EQ skills to get involved? But my mum is incredibly empathetic, and I think I learned it all from her.
Yeah.
And it's gone from mother to son.
Yeah.
And then I've got my kids, and it's like, how can I get them to get that kind of feeling about people?
Yeah.
Like my mum's incredible EQ, and it's like it's familial. Her mum was like that as well, but it's come in our family. It's come to me.
And I was thinking about how when I grew up, I remember my dad working hard, working late, coming back late, waiting for him to get home, staring out the window, and thinking, when I've got kids, I don't want to do that. I want to be there for the evening. I want to be having the playtime, coming home, playing hide and seek or whatever that is. And then now with a daughter who's 2, I'm thinking I need to go out and I need to work hard and I need to keep my job. I need to grow. I need to develop. And then hang on, now I'm doing the same thing. I'm working hard. I'm working late, maybe doing stopovers in London to make it all work. And I'm just into the same pattern. I have to clock it and go, actually, if I want to be different, if I want to find some synergy I haven't already got, I need to
change
adjust,
your patterns.
change the pattern, break out of the loop. Can we talk a little bit about guilt, right? Boss guilt, mum guilt, dad guilt. Touched on it there in terms of thinking through my working pattern, thinking, am I being the dad I want to be? Am I being the worker I want to be?
So you've got some.
I've got a bit, yeah.
Terri, what about you?
Do you have a bit?
Yeah. I've got plenty, but I think it's a choice. I think it's a choice to feel guilty or not.
Okay.
You have to be disciplined and you have to control it. But I think you have to own your decisions, and you have to. At Dartmouth, we talk a lot about being deliberate. About making deliberate choices, about making deliberate decisions, and our reactions need to be deliberate. And I think quite often that guilty feeling is like, I've drifted. I've drifted into 6:30, 6:45. I'm going to miss bedtime, and I didn't mean to, and I wanted to see him, and I think if you're not deliberate about it, and you're not thinking about how you want to use your time, then you should feel that's fair enough. I mean, it's you're not really thinking about how you prioritize the things that are important to you. I try really hard, and actually we have a schedule. We have a rule. We set a boundary really early on, which is we want our son to see one of our faces first thing in the morning. Like, we will always get up out of bed with him, and that will never be somebody else. And he will always see one of us before the end of the day. And we will always do bedtime with him. And there's an occasional grandparent in there, and they love it. So it's
thanks,
fine.
grandparents.
Exactly. We couldn't live without you. But there's an occasional grandparent in there. But apart from that, that's it. That's the boundary. And that means that 2 nights a week, I'm out the door at 6:15. And I'm backing out the door at 6:15. You could be talking to me. You could be saying, just one more thing. It's like put it in an email. I'm not listening.
One of the greatest clients that we've ever worked with is because it's private, I don't want to say exactly who it is, but it was one vertical of a big consulting company. And in this vertical, nearly all the senior leaders were women, and nearly all the team were women as well. There were a lot of women working there. And I asked the leader of this section, Jane, why her section, her vertical, was delivering so much more growth and so much more profitability than similar other verticals. And she said to me, John, she said, we're all mums. Everybody here wants to get home for bath time. So when we show up to work, we get it all done. We're not interested. Anything that's discretionary is not, let's get it all done. Let's get home. We've all got the same focus. We want to get it home. We want to get home to our kids. And what was interesting was she said, but some of our male colleagues, they basically are trying not to go home because they'd rather
they
get
don't
home.
Want to interrupt bedtime, right?
No, they don't want to interrupt.
Is it not that?
They don't want to be there at all.
They don't want to be there at all.
They'd rather get home and everything's done.
Right.
And I was like, this has never occurred to me because I'm a family person. I want to be there. But I see it also here. People who've got things to get home for, they're driving to get home. They want to get their jobs done. They get the jobs done. They're able to crack on, or sometimes, leave the office at 4:00, go home, do school pickup, do bedtime, do a bit of work. But luckily, the world has changed, hasn't it? That we're not tied to our gender roles or our desks And we can say to people that our home life is allowed to be visible in our workplaces to some extent.
Yeah, we've definitely got more fathers now who are really open about, I want to drop off a couple of nights a week. I've got to, there's a football thing that my son goes to, and I want to be there on a Friday night when he goes to that, and the kind of various things that fit around that, and you kind of like, what can you say to that as an employer? You're really going to make your staff choose between their work and their family. Like, you're only ever going to lose that equation.
Yeah, it's not going to work that well.
No.
Chris is going to be making some adjustments to his schedule.
Yeah, I feel like
I don't actually. I never feel that kind of guilt. I agree with what you're saying, Terri. That I do actually think it comes down to a bit of a lack of clear thinking, and then the other thing, which when I became, you said you've got your golden rules. Mine was, let's not do anything that doesn't fit with how we think you should parent. Let's do it the way we think you should do it. But I think it's the same in any job role at the CEO. I should do this job the way I think it should be done and be happy with it. And also, if I fail at anything, at least I did it my way and I failed. And I feel like a lot of the sort of the guilt and the frustration is just not finally working through the final details of exactly how you want to execute. But if you, Chris, work through your schedule, so you think about, is it reasonable to be away a night or two a week or whatever else? Well, if you had another job, you might be also doing that.
Yeah.
But if you work it through and think, is this reasonable? Is it what I'm happy with? If it is, execute on it. Don't feel guilty. I travel a lot and I don't feel guilty. I'll go away and sometimes stay an extra night. I don't feel guilty. My kids are a bit older now, but also it's an appropriate amount of time. It's okay to have a bit of me time. There's no point coming home really tired. Might as well take an extra day. Enjoy New York or wherever we're going.
But what you're saying is it's the final decision to go, yeah, this is what I think is right. I've decided.
That's exactly it. And with your other half and or your family and or kids and or your colleagues, is that ecosystem, is that okay with that? Do people here mind if I'm away an extra day? They probably like it. But it might be a problem. Yeah. So, but if they're okay with it, I'm okay with it, home's okay with it, do it, recharge myself, come back. And I think that maybe the Oxford education helps with clear thinking, but clear thinking helps with all these little nuances, doesn't it? And many of us aren't trained to think clearly and haven't had the benefit of maybe the kind of mentors that have really helped us define. It's the final few thought processes to get to real clarity, and then when you've got that, all the fuzz has gone. Yeah. Boom.
You've got to be able to have the confidence to be able to manage expectations too, right? It's some of it comes with confidence, and clearly it's your business.
I'm not really lacking in confidence,
right? And so, I mean, when I was first offered the job,
you're not lacking in confidence either.
not so much these days. I think
we can feel it.
Yeah. I think so. When I was first offered the job, my boss at the time, so my current boss, said to me, obviously you've got a slightly different setup to me, and that will bring some limitations. I'm out doing breakfast 3 times a week. I've got a lunch. I've got a couple of dinners. So we're going to have to think about how you're going to be able to do that. I said, no, we're not. Actually, we're going to have to think about how the role will look for somebody like me. We're going to have to think about what are the priorities for me in this role. I don't need to be doing the same job that you did. Actually, we're really different people. We're going to do it in a different way. And there are other things that I will do that are not, they're not what you weren't able to bring to the job. But it's not the case that I'm gonna, you've built the blueprint and it's my job just to fit into that blueprint. That's not going to work for me, and it wouldn't work for anybody walking into the job either, for that matter. But you have to be in a position where you can say that to someone.
Yeah, and that requires confidence. You see it in sports management and other things like that. When the manager changes, are they going to do it their way? And if they don't, it doesn't really work. And then they've got this regret that they didn't even do it their way and they failed. Whereas it's what I was saying before, if you do it your way and succeed, you'll be happy. If you do it your way and fail, you'll be happy. If you try and do what you should do and what everyone else, the weight of everyone else's expectations, it doesn't really work. But I think confidence is so important in helping break through that. And then also how you communicate. You've talked quite a lot about the little dialogues that you're having with people to make sure they also understand where you're coming from, which takes another round of skills, EQ skills. Where did you learn those?
Not sure. I mean, I think, you manage people for long enough. I think you start to fit. And you talked about EQ earlier on. And I think EQ is probably the single biggest skill that you need when you're managing people and you're running a business, because actually your ability to understand the way that people think and are going to receive what you're saying to them, to anticipate some of the concerns that they're going to have and to try and get around those, to me, it's the single most important thing to have. I think it's hard to learn, but I think you can tune into to your people. And I think you can, if you're open to hearing it and you're open-minded, you can start to tune into what they're saying. But I think years as a manager teaches you how to handle any dynamic with people, how to handle any situation. But it's 10 years of managing people, 15 years.
Is that what you've done?
It's a long time.
What was it like when you first started? We do a lot of work with people who are entry level into management.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was...
Did you make a lot of mistakes there?
Yeah.
I did.
Yeah, so many mistakes.
Me too.
Chris did.
Yeah, awful
I
mistakes.
watched some of yours.
Yeah, you did.
You were
there.
some of mine.
You were there to pick me up.
You were some of mine.
I had, straight out of university, I had quite a volatile boss, actually. You know, very much like this person needs a bit of a rocket. You know, this person, you know, it's a public or private, but just a bit of a smack around, you know. And that was my first blueprint for management. And I probably was a bit like that. I know I was like that as a manager and as a colleague, actually. I was one of those people who just, like, you would know what I thought. And I suppose I was confident in a different way. Like, I kind of didn't care what impact, or I didn't really realize what kind of impact I was having on people around me. And I remember sitting in it's like a management training meeting, and people talked about radical candor. The guy who was running it talked about the radical candor model. And it was like a light bulb went on for me. And I was like, okay, I've got it. Like, you can do this in a really different way. Like, you can have those feelings, and you can have that approach to, you know, you can express yourself in quite a direct way, but you can find a different form for it. And
you can also have the level of care that helps it come across well.
You can find a different framework for it. And as soon as I realized that, as soon as I learned that lesson, I remember where I was when we had that meeting.
I'd like to
do.
pause this. This isn't an advert for management training. But what Terri is saying is that a light bulb went on for her in a course, and it's completely changed the way she approaches her work. I mean, a lot of people say these courses don't do anything, Chris.
No.
I just want to reiterate this advert for interactive workshops by Terri. Courses can actually change the course of your career. Sorry, Terri, carry on.
Well, I will say it wasn't a course with you, right? So
sorry.
it's also not an advert, you know. But it's, I mean, I absolutely believe it.
No, generically for management courses.
I think it's. I'm a big proponent. I think you got to have people in the room who are willing to listen and are willing to, you know, kind of learn something about themselves. But a light bulb went on. The other thing that happened is that I then started pushing an entire agenda around, you know, radical candor, like the way that we treat people, the way that we talk about them, you know, taking some of the emotion and some of the, you know, the kind of personal feeling out of management, right? That's not what it is. And that, I think, had a big impact on the way that the culture at Dartmouth has grown, because there were other managers who were impacted by that.
So you were able to sort of push out the frontiers of your value set and what you had learnt, and you're able to start impacting the culture.
Yeah. Yeah.
And what you're saying about radical candor is something that I've always found very important, which is that we very often got something to say, we say it to the wrong person. So if we've been in a meeting and I've got a problem with you, I go out and talk to Chris about it. And it's a very simple kind of human level behavior. For some reason, we don't want to talk to the person. We want to talk to everyone else. We also then hold back on the things that would be really valuable to say. Yet, if we can find the words, if we can get the dialogues working, and if we can do it on a cultural level, then work becomes a lot easier. And but it's, I don't know what it is. It takes a selflessness to have radical candor.
Yeah.
Because when you speak really honestly, you're risking.
You are, but you can only ever be responsible for what you bring to a conversation, right? You can only ever be responsible for the feelings, the approach, the words. You know, that's on you, right? And you have to be really thoughtful about that and really considerate. But you can't be responsible for what the other person brings to that conversation, the baggage, the kind of the last boss, all of that stuff. In the end, like, I think once you realize that bit, and once you realize where your responsibility starts and ends, you can start to take that risk, because you can quantify it. You can say, okay, well, I'm confident in what I'm going to bring to this conversation. I don't know quite how it's going to land, but I can take accountability for the consequences of that.
And how the other person responds isn't my responsibility.
Yeah.
I can couch things in the best possible way. I can do it at the right time. I can use the right intonation. I can try and be very good citizen in terms of not blaming people. I can try and use facts rather than opinions. All the things I can do, but how that person reacts, that's up to them.
It's outside of your control, ultimately.
Yeah. But that's why people hold back also, is because they want to try and control the situation. And they don't, and by not bringing things up or not being open and honest, not being radically candorous, you're trying to control the situation by not bringing things up.
But you're doing them a disservice in the end. You not raising these things with people. Some people might be mortified to hear the way you think about them, or they've done this thing or whatever. If only they had the chance to hear it, they would learn something from that. And I think you're failing people by not doing it. And again, I talk about responsibility a lot. It's really boring, but like the job, and people say, you're excited about the job, you're excited about it. It's a real responsibility, and yes, it's exciting, and it's like my parents are really proud, and there's all of that stuff.
Very proud.
but like I think that people who come to work with a real sense of responsibility and a sense of kind of service to the people around them are some of your best colleagues. Like, generally speaking, they're the people who do the most for the firm. They go the furthest because they're there in order to help other people. And that gets recognised. Yeah.
And that element of radical candour comes back to what you said right at the start of noticing that moment when it's your opportunity to say something. Oh, this is my moment. I'm supposed to say something. Me. I've noticed. Yeah, it's me.
But that is also part of our synergy area, isn't it? That we're not really working in a relationship unless I'm honest with you. And if we don't have that honesty, then we have individuals under the illusion that it could be in a team or a relationship, but we're not really working together, and then each person's just doing their own bit. So that breaking through with that truth, that honesty, is actually partly what allows people to work together, and directing those conversations so they happen well is a skill that we can develop. And I think it takes a lot of courage.
Yeah. I think that how you develop a culture is hard, because individually I think people can buy into that. I think you have to develop a culture where there's just permission to have some of those conversations, where there's, it's understood that, we'll say some direct things sometimes, and we'll say some stuff that, you might not like, but it won't ever be about you. It will always be about your work. It will always be about, some of the challenges that we're facing, and like you can receive it that way or not, but that's what we're going to do.
I would like to ask you one, sort of have a little section at the end of this podcast just to discuss about getting a new job, because I realize, how many candidates do you think Dartmouth have placed over the time that it's been in existence? Is it in the tens of thousands?
Yeah, it will be. Yeah.
So tens of thousands of people have moved jobs or got jobs through you and your team. If I was starting out, if I was a senior trying to move and I'm thinking about making a change, what's your aggregate advice for those people? And also, as the recruiter, how honest are you with them about what they can and can't do, and what they should and shouldn't say? Or
well, I'll give you my advice first, and then you can decide how honest I am. But I think the thing that I tell people all the time, internally and externally, is don't ever confuse change with progress. Because so often, I find anyway, particularly with people who are in their first job, they're looking for their second job or the third, whatever it is. It's so often they can feel that sense of like, am I really progressing? Am I really moving forward? I know how I'm going to change that. I'm going to diagnose this. I'm going to change something. I'm going to go to a different job, and it might be a totally lateral move. It might be the same job with a different name above the door, and it'll take a year before they trust me. It'll take a year for me to really understand what I'm doing. And at that point, everyone else has moved on another year. And like, maybe that's the right move and maybe it's not. But I don't think people necessarily diagnose that well enough. I don't think they really look at that question of like, is this progress or is it change? And I'm talking as somebody who's worked for the same company for the last 10 years, 11 years, and I've worked for the same person for the last 14 years.
But you've made a lot of progress.
I've made a lot of progress.
Without the change.
Maybe, and maybe there are moments where I should have made a change. Like maybe I should have, resigned at some point, gone and done something different. I suppose it's hard to know. It's hard to know what that reality would have looked like. But I think so often part of the reason that people's careers don't pan out or progress in the way that they would hope is because they resigned at the wrong time. Like they made a change at the wrong time. They quit at the wrong moment. And that judgment call of when it's the right time and when it's not is really hard. But I've said this to a lot of candidates over the years. I've got one in mind in particular. I'm having this conversation with right now. You shouldn't, folding in your cards and, throwing them in is it's not the right thing to do. And from a recruitment perspective, like that's how we make money. You know, it's great if you could just, you know, every candidate said, oh, I'm sick of this, you know, off I go. But it's terrible career advice. And we're very honest about where somebody wants to go and how they're going to get there. We talk about classroom to boardroom recruitment. So, you know, supporting on all of those moments in someone's career where they're on that journey from, you know, school, university, right to, you know, kind of very senior role. And like, you have to think about the long term if you're going to build a relationship with those people. That's built into the DNA of the business. You can't shortchange them with a really, you know, sort of, you know, bad advice that's short-term benefit to you.
Yeah.
Is it progress or change is just a great addition to the lexicon of knowledge that we love to mull
Don't
here.
confuse change with progress.
Yeah, what I'm thinking also is really interesting. So we're often involved in leadership development or you know, management development within companies, and as part of that we do a lot of coaching work. So we're on the other half of the conversation that you're having. We're at the other end of the phone. We're in a meeting room or in a coffee area, and we're having a one-to-one coaching, and they're maybe not telling us that they're speaking to recruitment and thinking about leaving, but they're saying to us, I'm really unhappy here. My boss X, my team Y, this company X. And I often try and say to them is, if at all possible, stay until after you've worked through this problem, because once you've worked through this problem, you've got great options and you've learned from working through this problem. But if you just reactively leave, you actually haven't learned anything through this. And let's instead try and deal with the tricky boss and get a better working rhythm. Let's try and deal with the difficult company and get the pay rise that we didn't get. And then when we got all that, if you then want to leave, then do it. But don't leave just because you can't make things work out. And it's interesting that I never really thought through what's going on the other side. Yeah. You know, I know that friends are very likely to tell people that they kind of over empathize. Oh, just, you know, that's horrible. They over agree. Oh, yeah, that's terrible. Your company should never do that. Your boss should never have said that. Did they really not pay you that? Did you really have to do that? For some reason, people's friends are like the wrong echo chamber. But the people who understand how to progress, we're kind of giving this similar kind of advice, which is work through this situation and get to a good place, and then leave then if you want to. Yeah.
You're so right, actually. In the analogy, so I talk about, you know, trying to wear in a new pair of shoes. And, you know, there'll be moments where you have those pressure points, right, where you're trying to, you know, there's a spot that's particularly problematic. And, like, you could either take off the shoes, chuck them in, and, you know, start with a new pair of shoes. Like, maybe they'll rob you, maybe they won't. Like, or you work through it. You figure out, okay, like, how's it going to feel? How are they going to suit me? How are they going to fit me after I've gone through this? Because you might find that actually, once you've removed one or two of those pressure points, like, it's a great job, it's a great opportunity, it's, you know, exactly where you need to be. But you're right, if you never work through that problem, the only thing that you learn from it is how to walk away when you've got a problem. And, you know, I'm sure there are plenty of careers that haven't been, kind of ruined by that. But I think that you would have a more fulfilling career. Yeah.
Or maybe just persevere enough to, it may not be solvable, but persevere enough that you can walk out with your head held high saying, I've really tried hard. I mean, like a bad relationship actually at home, it's worth working at. If you really have to leave, fine, but don't quit just because it's difficult. Work through as much as you can. If you can't get past that, maybe it's time to find somebody else, you know?
I find friends do often ask me for career advice, actually, and I'm fairly brutal. I'm fairly brutal. Like, often my advice is, well, like, how hard have you tried at this? Like, what have you actually said or done to try and change the situation? You know, like, you're complaining to me, and you've got all the talk when you're with me, but, like, what conversations have you actually had with people? And I think, you know, outside work, even inside work, sometimes people want to have the conversation. They want to complain, but they don't necessarily want to solve a problem. They just want permission to walk away. They want permission to opt out of what is potentially quite a challenging situation. And I never give them the permission. I always say, get back to the table, back to the negotiating table. You need to sort this out.
Agree.
Being a good friend as well.
Most people, the difficult boss, the whatever, they are actually really reasonable. And sometimes it's also you, isn't it? Sometimes your boss is difficult for a reason. It's because maybe you're not delivering, or maybe you're difficult to manage. I mean, I would be very difficult to manage. But
I've been difficult to manage.
Yeah, exactly. But you know, it takes a bigger perspective, and I think again, our friends don't always help us because they don't say, "Oh, it's possibly you as well." So, but this is where, like, the interpersonal skills. Every relationship's two people. So if it's not working, it's two people. you've said before, you take responsibility. How much do you take? If you blame the other person, you're not really taking very much. So I try and think, what can I do about this? And I don't always do that. Sometimes you just don't want to. It takes a lot of effort, doesn't it, to help get those relationships better.
Terri, what's next for Dartmouth Partners and your leadership there?
We just took private equity investment back in April, which is really exciting. So we have a new round of investors, which is all about growth. And, I think it's kind of a Ray Dalio kind of ethos, but very much, we try and hire ambitious, bright, go-getters who want to build something, do something. You've got to keep growing. Like you've got to give them a path. Otherwise, they'll outgrow you. Like if all your best people outgrow you, then you're kind of done at some point. So you've got to keep growing. And so the mandate is very much keep growing the business. My boss read Jim Collins' Good to Great 10 years ago, so 30% growth year on year. Like that's what we think about. So that's one of our mantras. So I'll be looking at international in particular. That's one of the things that I haven't done a lot of, because I've been focused on London. But international is exciting. You're in New York. We're in New York.
It's really exciting.
Very
the land of opportunity.
Yeah, but there's more countries, isn't there? There's Dubai, there's Singapore, there's all of Europe. There's places to go. And there's a great synergy from working in these different countries.
Yeah, there absolutely is. That gravitational field that I talked about, that's exactly what you have as soon as you're working internationally. So many of our clients are international. And so it helps you to build a really, holistic business.
Well, Terri, we're just like your parents. We're all cheerleading you on.
Yeah,
we've had an excellent podcast.
This has been very fun. Thank you for being here.
Chris, how does interactive workshops help people in things like Candour and synergy?
Well, as you've rightly advertised during the podcast, we are running these kind of workshops, helping people understand things like radical Candour, hopefully having some of those epiphanies, those moments of, that's why my manager's like that, or that's my moment to speak up in my team, or something similar to that. We're doing a lot of that with clients all over the world, don't we?
It's really fun.
It's great fun.
Terri, thank you for coming.
Thanks very much.
Will you come back again when you've learned some more stuff that you can share? Because you're going to be learning a lot. You like that? Yeah,
well, you could come and teach me some stuff. I'll come back and talk about it.
Okay, well,
we'll do a course.
We could do a bit of that, yeah. But will you come back again?
Please do.
And we'll see you in the city.
Amazing.
Of London. Love
Thank you both.
Thank you.
See you soon.
See you soon.
Thanks for watching this video by Interactive Workshops. Give it a like down below and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next video. Click through to here or here to watch another video by Interactive Workshops.